on his worldview are on steroids. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party fought tooth and nail to keep him off of every state ballot in the country. The party made sure that Joe Biden would not debate him during the primary process, which was not a process at all, and it was fixed to make sure that the sitting president was as protected and exposed the least amount as possible.
The White House released a photo showing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris walking together with a caption that said, quote, "We're working for you." Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says they have no shame.
They have no shame. You saw that on display at the Democrat National Convention. They're engaging in fantasy over fact. We've got to make sure people understand this is not, you can't make an emotional decision here. You have got to make a decision based on the record and not the rhetoric. They're saying things that are patently untrue. They're gaslighting the American people, and they expect that, I guess, that the people are not intelligent enough to figure this out. This is for all the marbles. This is the most important election of our lifetimes. No question.
It's not just a talking point from the left. Abortion is on the ballot this November. Chris Woodward continues our coverage.
Nearly a dozen states will have ballot initiatives involving abortion. These states include Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, New York, Nevada, and South Dakota. In many of the states, the ballot initiatives seek to establish or provide a fundamental or constitutional right to abortion in the state constitution. Kelsey Pritchard, Director of State Public Affairs at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, says the stakes are high.
If we lost them all, that could mean the loss of protections for 52,409 babies annually. And so it's very important that people understand how extreme these amendments are and that they engage to defeat them in November.
While these are state issues, Pritchard says there has been a lot of outside money from George Soros and Planned Parenthood going into the ballot initiatives.
Because when these pass, they'll increase their profits at the expense of babies' lives and at the expense of women and girls and parents. And we've been majorly outspent in every race. It was 2-1 in Michigan and in Ohio as these outside left-wing groups in the abortion lobby poured tens of millions into these fights.
Pritchard urges voters to pay close attention to the languages in the ballot initiative. I'm Chris Woodward.
Republicans are looking to gain a majority in the Senate during November elections. Montana Republican Senator Steve Daines.
The Senate uniquely has responsibilities for personnel. We decide who's on the Supreme Court, who the cabinet officials are going to be. So we need that 51st seat to make sure we've got a Republican majority in the United States Senate.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The AFA Resource Center is a one-stop shop to find tools that will help you grow in your relationship with God. We've also got items to help others find out about the ministries of AFA, like the AFR Trucker Hat. We're talking a very stylish 6-panel mesh-back hat with the AFR logo made out of brown leather. It's fully adjustable to fit just about anyone, so get yours today at resources.afa.net. resources.afa.net.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues. Today is Monday, August 26th. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning. And right off the bat, Ed knows today's date.
Yes, I do.
Ed knows today's date, and folks, here is why.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Now, do you know who that was?
It sounds like Foster Brooks. I'm not sure anybody remembers who that
Don
is.
Ho.
Is that Don Ho?
It's not the Carpenters. I know that.
I'm shocked.
Is that Don Ho?
We're in the town where Elvis Presley was born.
That was Elvis?
That's a young Elvis.
It said Elvis. So it may be an Elvis impersonator. We're up to our eyeballs with those around here. So
yes. Well, congratulations, Ed.
Yes, made it to 66.
Yes, that's right.
We have a listener. We call him Birthday Dave.
Uh-huh.
And he left a message. He grew up with my wife, so I've known Dave for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And every year he leaves a happy birthday song on a text message on my phone.
Yes.
And with his dog howling in the background. And Dave, he knows he just has one of those minds that can keep up. He when I first met him, he told me, he said, "What's your birthday?" And I told him August 26, 1958, and he said, "You were born on a Tuesday."
Yep.
He knows calendars like that.
That's right.
So
he's one of those. But happy birthday, Ed.
Hey, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And Chris Woodward also in studio with us.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. You hadn't wished me happy birthday yet.
I did.
You did?
I did.
Okay.
In devotion earlier.
Oh, all right. I'm just checking because
Feliz cumpleaños to our Espanol listeners.
Yes.
There you go.
Brent Creeley, our producer, has not wished me happy birthday. Instead, he's just harassed me when I come into the studio, as he typically does. Nothing special about today.
That's right.
Just Monday.
So what does Ed Vitagliano do for something special on his birthday?
I am going, the family is going over to my son's house and daughter-in-law, where the grandkids are located tonight.
Big party.
Yeah. So we'll party. I have no idea what's planned. It doesn't matter. The grandkids are there. I don't care who else is there at that point.
Am I being stereotypic if I say is it an Italian meal?
No, I don't. I have no idea what we'll have.
Oh, surprise!
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
What do your grandkids call you?
Papa.
Okay.
I am Papa, and I've never been happier than when I've been Papa.
There you go.
Anyway, yes, thank you all very much.
You bet.
The staff sang happy birthday to me in devotions this morning.
Yeah.
And listen, as I said to them, it is a great place to work here. The people very loving and friendly.
Yeah.
And every day is like a birthday at AFA. So anyway, so our listeners are thinking, yeah, it's your birthday. Big deal. We all have one once a year. I will say this. It is kind of strange that almost everyone I meet now is younger. You pass people on the street, you meet people, and you go, all these people are younger than me for the most part.
Yes.
That's right.
There's a few that are older, obviously, and but that is a strange feeling when you start to get in that mentality. Everybody is.
Yeah, and then people start saying, what was it like in the 60s?
Yes.
Well, I lived through that. Or I get on my Instagram music from 1962.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. And I lived through it in 64 and 65 and all of that. So anyway, listen.
My worst moment at getting older was when a young lady, I was at a restaurant or whatever, I'm checking out, paying, and she said, "I gave you the senior discount." And I didn't even ask for it. I said, "What do you mean you gave it?" I said, "How did you know I was old enough?" And she blushed. Bless her heart. She said, "Oh, I just assumed." Well, you assumed right. So anyway, let's move on. There's plenty going on. There's plenty going on in the world besides just my birthday.
Yes, there is.
That's right.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
Well, former President Donald Trump is criticizing Vice President Harris on the third anniversary of the deadly Abbey Gate bombing. That's the bombing that killed 13 Americans during the Biden administration's withdrawal from Afghanistan 3 years ago. I have a little bit of audio courtesy of our Steve Jordahl. He cut this for us earlier today in Virginia, clip 12.
Third year. This is, I hate to even call it an anniversary because I don't like the word anniversary in this case. But this is the third year of that tragic event. And because of that event, we did so badly that Russia went in and invaded Ukraine. Israel was attacked, as you know, on October 7th. We have people don't respect us. They don't respect us anymore as a country. And where is our president? We don't even have a president. We have a fascist person running who's incompetent, and we have a president who's not even around. He went to California for a vacation because they threw him essentially out of the party. And then he came back home and I said, "Oh, is he going to go to the White House?" No, he went to Delaware to take another vacation. And you got Russia over there with like nuclear threats. We got to have a president. We got to have a real president that's respected.
Wow, that's as they say, that's a burn.
Yes.
I mean, that is an accurate, I think, an accurate unpacking of the problems that this administration has, Fred. And it's easy to forget. Joe Biden is still president. I say it's easy to forget because technically, of course, he is, but he's just not in the news anymore.
No.
And he is taking vacations. And we still have 4 months left before Inauguration Day. Whoever wins on November 5th, we have 4 months left.
And it almost seems like his party, the Democratic Party, want him off the front page. Right after his speech a week ago, President Biden gave a speech at the DNC, the convention. And that night, he got on Air Force One, and I mean, his speech went to midnight, but he got on Air Force One, flew to California, spent the rest of the week there, flew home Friday, Saturday to Delaware, and he went to the beach. I woke up this morning, and I'm not sure it was Fox or one of the news agencies had him, Joe Biden, sitting in a lawn chair at the beach. And it's like, okay, who's running things? And it's almost like, and I'm just speculating here, like Joe Biden in his mind says, well, they didn't want me to run again. So I'm checking out. And that's where it seems to be. On the other hand, you have former President Trump today, just before this visit at this center in Falls Church, Virginia, which happened just in the last couple of hours. He went to Arlington National Cemetery to draw attention to this being the 3rd anniversary of the death of those 13 soldiers. And, Kamala Harris cannot now, thanks to videotape, withdraw herself from what happened. She was asked, and this is some time ago, were you the last person in the room before that decision was made to withdraw from Afghanistan? And she said, yes, I was the last person in the room. That meaning was I gave my blessing to what Joe Biden decided to do in Afghanistan. So she can't separate herself from that. And then we had this horrible scene when the bodies of those dear soldiers were brought back to the United States. That scene that probably a lot of us have seen, that Joe Biden was checking his watch.
Yeah.
As each of the coffins came off that airplane, he was standing there checking his watch.
Yeah, the look was, I have better places to be.
When is this going to be over?
When is this going to be
over? I want to get on to something else. Just one more thing on this event in Virginia this morning. Unlike Kamala Harris, former President Trump seems to enjoy taking questions from the media.
Right.
And one of the big questions from several reporters this morning, what about the debate? Because there is supposed to be a debate between Kamala Harris and former President Trump coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow on the 10th. But now there's a squabble. Trump said this morning, I agreed to conditions of the debate the same as CNN.
Right.
Standing at a podium with mics muted when the other person is talking. Now, according to reports, the Harris campaign wants to change that. They want a podium. They want to sit down, each of the candidates sitting down with notes in front of them.
Oh, well, we know why that is. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So apparently the Trump campaign is balking at that because, well, you were going to say it.
Yeah.
Why? Okay. Why do you need notes?
She can't debate without notes.
Yes. So
she's not capable of it.
This is going to unfold, and it's going, they're in negotiations now with ABC with these apparent demands from the Harris camp about some changes.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about the sitting down part. In other words, why someone wants a seated debate, unless it is purely for optics, which, frankly, I'm going to say, Vice President Kamala Harris, that is all she can rely on is optics. It would look more relaxed. It would look more like someone sitting across from you at the kitchen table. The notes, that should be, Trump should say no, absolutely no notes. You've got to be able to, on your feet, debate. And frankly, either way, it's going to be tough on Kamala Harris. Now, I don't think she's a pushover when it comes to debating. I don't think she will do badly. It could be a catastrophe. Anybody can have a catastrophic debate performance. However, it might actually be even worse for Kamala Harris if she has the notes, because nothing would look like she's more prepared than if she's shuffling through papers to try to answer. So I don't think she's capable of going toe-to-toe with anyone in a debate. She's proven that even in the Democratic Party debates in 2020.
I think the Harris camp is also worried about the flip-flops.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much on video of her saying, I'm against fracking.
Yeah.
So much on video saying, yeah, Medicare for all.
Oh, so the notes would be, here is your position.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're afraid of Trump saying, but you said on this date, you said on this date about this issue, because she is the queen of flip-flops right now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We've aired 11 billion, and that's a real number in the South, clips of her back in 2020 saying, I'm in favor of this, I'm not in favor of that, and now it's a complete reversal. The fracking thing is really damaging to her in the state of Pennsylvania, where right now, if you believe polls, Trump is beating her. And that's a big issue because Pennsylvania has somewhere in the neighborhood of around 19 or 20 electoral votes.
Yeah.
And he and J.D. Vance have spent a lot of time there. That is where the Harris-Walz campaign officially kicked off, was in Philadelphia, because they're going with the whole freedom manifesto, or theme, if you will, I should say. Whereas Trump and Vance are running on bringing drill, baby drill, bringing jobs back to America, that kind of thing. So it would be interesting to see these two go at it over an issue like fracking, which is not something that's maybe as glamorous as like the economy, but let me just explain it. Like, if we can nail down and really go after fracking and allow that to happen more in this country, it will bring down energy prices, which brings down food prices.
Well, and it makes those kinds of technological approaches will make us energy independent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's startling that the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has acted try to move the country in the opposite direction by cutting domestic production and then asking Saudi Arabia to produce more oil so we can buy it. It's been a it's been a bizarre 3.5 years.
The irony of that situation is, so they get it from another country on the other side of the planet, and then they bring it here on a dirty diesel fuel ship, with all these carbon emissions, and it's all in the name of saving the environment.
Yeah, and Fred, to your point, the flip-flops, I don't know. Tim always says this. He questions just how many people are actually in the middle, undecided. And I don't know the answer to that question. So I don't know whether these kinds of issues, the flip-flops, for example, make much difference. I think there's probably enough, number-wise, independent voters in these battleground states to turn and flip the election.
Yep.
But she has come out and said in the past she wants to shut down offshore drilling.
Yep.
I mean, this is an approach to our energy independence which is anything but. And in states like Pennsylvania, it might turn the tide. So we'll have to wait and see.
For sure.
But it is interesting that they want notes for the debate.
Yes.
I'm not sure it will have the effect they think it will if she's caught on camera shuffling through her papers and looking like she's not ill-prepared.
Well, what happens, too, if you have a candidate that's relying on notes, you have another candidate over here who says he can do it without notes, told a reporter that this morning. He was asked, how do you prepare for a debate? He said, I really don't prepare for a debate. He says, I've been doing this for years.
Right.
I know where I stand on the issues, and I haven't changed.
You look more confident if you're doing it without notes.
Yes.
You look like you have the facts on your fingertips, so to speak, and you can change on the fly.
Yeah.
You can go from one subject to another and not look like you are relying on notes. So it might not help Kamala Harris if she has the notes, but she's in big trouble if she has no notes.
Yes.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the vice president is competent at this level of politics.
Yeah.
I think she's in over her head.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems clear to me that the Democratic Party and their allies in the mainstream media, they know it. Just like everybody knew Joe Biden was losing his mental faculties. Everyone knew that. Everyone on the left pretended it wasn't true until they wanted him out. Okay. And I think they understand that Kamala Harris is incompetent, and they're going to protect her as well.
Well, that's why they've been hiding her from the media, the reporters. what is it, day 35 now, something like that, that she hasn't done a sit-down interview with a reporter.
Well, I saw a CNN reporter. I don't know if we have, it was a person on one of the talk shows. I don't know if we have this sound, but he said that they're hiding her because all of the disasters, all the political missteps have come during interviews.
That's right.
You know, so they understand that is not friendly terrain for the vice president.
I do have something that is similar to what you're talking about, but it's not that exact soundbite. Let's do this one. It's Bill Maher on HBO, Democrat Bill Maher on HBO, criticizing CNN in front of one of its own personalities, Caitlin Collins. Maher is of the opinion that CNN is just in the tank for the Democratic Party, and they've been cheerleading her for a long time now. But he's talking specifically about the hours immediately following her acceptance speech last Thursday night. Clip 10.
I'm talking about the people on CNN, and what I know what the conservative side of America thinks, and I don't blame them. I watched Kamala's speech last night. It ended at 8:09, I guess 11:09 in the East. It wasn't until 11:23 till the one conservative guy, what's his name?
Scott Jennings.
This Lonely Scott, I call him.
David Urban was there too.
Wait a second. I watched from 8:09 to 8:23, they was just gushing about how great a speech it was. And I think she did fine. I didn't think it was as good as they were making it out to be. But if I'm a conservative in America and I'm watching CNN, just for the straight middle of the road, that's what I hear for 15 minutes, is it's great, and then Lonely Scott. It does look, I mean, and when you see the path, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC.
Now, the thing is, and we played this clip last week after it happened, but that same lady, Caitlin Collins, was on Stephen Colbert's show, where he talk about Democrats in the tank, or media people in the tank for Democrats. Stephen Colbert brought up he applauded CNN for being middle of the road and just reporting the news, to which people in the audience started laughing in New York City.
Yes. Well, listen, everyone knows what's going on. I think. Well, I say everyone, not everyone. There are a lot of people who have fallen for it, but Bill Maher we've said this before, he's an old school liberal. Mm-hmm. He despises Donald Trump, so he's no fan of the conservatives. He hates Christianity. All right, this guy despises conservatism, but he is an old school liberal, Fred, who grew up in a country where old school liberals applauded free speech and they wanted the news media to do their job, which is to report the facts. Even Bill Maher understands that the left-wingers in the media are just an extension of the Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah. If I was a journalist, and I mean a real journalist working at CNN right now, I'd be embarrassed. Or ABC or CBS or NBC, or I guess they don't even are embarrassed at MSNBC. Just forget about it. I mean, they're cheerleaders for the Democratic Party. And I know we're going to get into what happened last Friday afternoon with RFK Jr. And a big part of his speech when he came out and said, I'm endorsing Donald Trump. I mean, you talk about old school liberal.
Right.
He's one of those that defines that term.
Right.
But, one of his big portions of his speech was going at the mainstream media. And what has happened in this country, it's very dangerous.
Yes.
The mainstream media has become an arm of the Democratic Party.
Right.
That is why Bill Maher was making, gushing about her speech, that she could do nothing wrong. She did deliver strongly the speech. She delivered the words in front of her very well.
Mm-hmm.
She did.
Yeah.
But she had all the words in front of her.
Right.
She had practiced that, and she had an adoring crowd in front of her. Pretty easy to do that kind of thing. But, we just talked about a moment ago, she's shying away from hard questions because she cannot handle that. And old school liberals are noticing that. And I think old school liberals are getting worried because some have drawn the comparison to, we're getting to the point where it's almost like Russia.
Yeah.
Where the government and the state media are in lockstep with one another. And anybody who steps outside of that, oh, that's misinformation. That's a danger to democracy, what they're saying over there.
And that's why these old school liberals are nervous.
Yes.
Like Bill Maher and some of these RFK Jr. And we will get to RFK Jr. and what his decision for his campaign was on Friday. Most of our listeners know, but we'll unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
All these old school liberals, they understand the danger of weaponizing the federal government, of corporate America being in bed with one side of the political spectrum, the news media being a mouthpiece for only one side, the social media conglomerates working to suffocate free speech. They all understand this is a sword that cuts both ways. You may get your way in 2024, but that sword may come for you.
Yes.
Soon.
Yes.
And I think that's why they're very nervous about this. What it appears to be is this meshing together. Almost, I don't want to go overboard and say it's outright fascism yet, but when you have all those institutions gelling together to suppress free speech, we had in Europe. I don't know if we're going to get to this story. Steve Jordahl may be the one covering it today, of the head of a kind of free speech social media platform arrested.
Yes.
Okay. We have people calling for the end of misinformation. Was it Governor Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor?
Yeah.
Governor who said, listen, you can't have, there's no First Amendment protection for misinformation.
Right.
Wasn't that him?
It was. And that's not correct on his part.
Right. But that belief makes old school liberals nervous.
Well, I think COVID really unleashed the agenda of the left.
Right.
When it came, you couldn't question what medication you should take. You weren't supposed to question whether you should take the shot.
You could get fired for it.
Yes.
They wanted people to get a shot or lose their job.
Right.
Yes. That's where it was, and that the real agenda was unleashed then, and we're still seeing indications of that.
Because those on the radical left, I want to be fair about this, there are old school Democrats who they're nervous like Maher, okay? But on the radical left, people are starting to understand just how radical they are.
Yes.
And whether or not Kamala Harris is revealed to be a part of that radical movement, I believe she is. Whether the majority of voters understand that remains to be seen.
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short break, and we will come back for more of today's issues. Hope you'll join us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
Paul once wrote to the Christians at Corinth these words, "Love is patient and kind." I ran across a story in my reading once which I wish to pass along to you. I think it has something of a moral in it. Back during the Second World War, the parents of a sailor went for several weeks without hearing anything from their son. Finally, they gave up on their son and considered him a war victim. However, near the end of the war, the parents, who lived in New Jersey, received a phone call from someone in San Diego. After a moment on the phone, the parents recognized the voice as that of their son. He was alive. During the course of the conversation, the son explained to his parents that for the past several months, he'd found it difficult to write because he'd been taking care of a war victim. He told them that the person had been wounded in the war and had lost a leg, an arm, an eye, and part of his face. His parents expressed concern over the poor sailor and then bragged on their son for taking care of him during all those months. The boy then asked his parents for permission to bring the wounded sailor home to live with them. He explained that the boy didn't have another home, nor anyone else to care for him. His parents expressed their concern for the wounded sailor and also told their son they thought it was a very noble thing for him to want to bring the sailor home. But after some conversation, the parents expressed their desire to their son that he not bring the boy home with him. They simply didn't want the job of taking care of such a battle-scarred sailor. Their son said that he understood their feelings and said that he would not bring the boy home. Expressing his love for the parents, the sailor hung up. You know, I guess it's hard to fulfill such a request as the sailor son made. For most of us don't want a disfigured person around the house, do we? None of us like to look at ugly things, and most of us judge a person's beauty by their physical appearance. We appreciate the good that those who are disfigured have done, but we'd rather just not have to be burdened with them around the house. Many times we feel sorry for the physically handicapped, so we give some little something that requires no effort on our part and does them little good. But I think what the handicapped person wants more than anything else is to be treated like a human being. The morning after they spoke with their son, the couple in New Jersey received a telegram from the naval officials stating that their son had jumped from a window to his death. The parents couldn't understand why their son had reacted so to their request until the body arrived and the casket was opened. Their son had only one arm, one leg, one eye, and a badly disfigured face. Maybe we should try a little harder to love those who want to be treated like a human being.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139, 23, and 24.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week, at least the first 3 days of it. Joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. All right, Chris, what do we got next?
Well, this one could very well have been the lead story had Donald Trump not paid a visit there to the people of the great state of Virginia to mark the anniversary of the Afghanistan exit. We had his audio earlier, so do check out the podcast later, and you'll get that story that I'm talking about. The thing that could have been the lead was RFK Jr.'s departure from the presidential race. This was on Friday, which again is one of the reasons why it's important to have a news service operating on Fridays, because big news tends to happen, especially during an election year or during a Supreme Court term on Friday. So always make it a point to check out our news service on Fridays, afn.net. We've got some audio here of RFK. Let's begin with this one just to kind of, maybe in case you missed it, however we want to do it. But let's begin with this one. It's RFK Jr. explaining why he left the Democratic Party. Clip 1.
Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent.
Wow, that is a lot of body blows that RFK Jr. is landing on the Democratic Party. You know, a lot of people don't remember. They're not old like me, okay? All right, or Fred here, but you know, John F. Kennedy as president passed tax cuts. I have a quote from him where he says that the rights that are listed in the Bill of Rights come from God Almighty and not the state. That is not an idea you're going to hear in today's Democratic Party. I mean, we're talking about now. Conservatives and liberals have had serious disagreements. You know, when we're talking about in the 60s and 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, on how to spend money and whether we should build up the military or invest it in welfare programs. That has always been kind of the traditional back and forth. But what RFK Jr. Was just saying, Fred, and including talking about political corruption.
Yes.
And talking about the fact that the Democratic Party was hiding the cognitive decline of the sitting president.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are now in the Democratic Party in league with, in bed with, if you will, all these big conglomerate centralized economic powers in our country. You're talking about, big agriculture, these companies that are buying up small farms. And you're just going, well, who's going to own our agriculture here? And what happens if they become politically motivated? All right. This is serious stuff that RFK Jr. is talking about. And I'm guessing that he and President Trump will have some serious disagreements on policy, but there's a lot of what RFK Jr. is saying that I'm sitting there going, I agree with this guy.
Oh, absolutely. And, having lived through those Kennedy years, the assassination, the former President Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's assassination.
Right.
Having lived through that and lived through the years when the Kennedy Democrats ruled.
Right. That was a powerful family. Ted Kennedy was a senator for decades.
Yes. They ruled the news cycle.
Right.
Because the Kennedy family was that important. And now to have this member of the Kennedy family saying he doesn't recognize the Democratic Party anymore. I mean, I hope you heard what he had to say. He called them, the current Democrats, Biden, Harris, and their machine, a threat to democracy.
Yes.
So just think about this. They keep saying Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. What Kennedy is saying, no, the real threat here is the Democratic Party. And he talks about the weaponization. He sounds so much like Donald Trump. The weaponization of federal departments.
Right.
The judicial department. Kennedy spoke out about the forced vaccinations and the damage it was doing to people. So it was almost like the current script of the Republican Party and Donald Trump. That's where Kennedy says that's where the old Democratic Party was. That's same sort of thing. It was an extremely powerful moment when he came out there.
Yeah.
And now members of his family over the weekend were disowning him, all right, because they still want to be part and recognized as being part of the Democratic Party of today. But what he's doing, the other thing that he mentioned and he talked about on Friday, because of his views, the Democratic Party and their lawyers have been working to keep him off the ballot.
Right.
Yes.
So he declared himself as an independent, but they were worried about the 4, 5, 6, and I think up to 20. I'm talking about poll percentages at one point in certain areas. They were worried because they know this is a close election coming up. They were worried that 5%, if he drew those votes away from the Democratic Party, that their candidate will lose.
Right.
So they've been going to court to keep him off the ballot. Is that democracy?
Right.
And they wouldn't let him debate. No way. We don't want him part of the debate. The mainstream media, no way part of allowing Kennedy on that stage. So it was a very powerful moment on Friday when he took the stage there to make this announcement. And then later Friday night, he joins Donald Trump at a big event. I think it was in Phoenix.
I think so.
And
they have been talking for a while.
Yeah.
They've been talking
Trump
for a while
and
because
RFK.
right now, yes, they have their differences, but right now they have more similarities than certainly Kennedy is saying than with his old party.
Yeah.
Well, listen, again, a lot of people may not remember back in '68 when RFK Jr.'s dad, Robert Kennedy,
yes,
he affectionately was called Bobby Kennedy. Now, I was a Republican. I would never have voted for Bobby Kennedy, but he had a real shot at winning the Democratic Party nomination.
Yes.
And probably because of his young age and his hostility towards organized crime. He was Attorney General and went to war against the mob in this country and got a lot of prosecutions. He wanted the Vietnam War to end. Bobby Kennedy had a real shot of winning the presidency. And there was the sympathy from for the Kennedys because JFK had been assassinated in '63, so we're just talking 5 years later. So RFK Jr. Again, Ted Kennedy ran for president on a number of occasions, was a powerful U.S. senator for decades and decades. RFK Jr. Has his Democratic Party bona fides or bona fides. He's been a part of that wing of American politics for a long time. I believe him when he says they've changed.
Yes.
And they pose a threat the Democratic Party poses a threat to democracy.
One other thing that Republicans use to criticize Democrats is, again, Democrats say Republicans are the threat to democracy. Republicans say, no, you are, and you're harming people because you control the media. The people controlling information, you have them in your Democratic back pocket. RFK got into a little bit of, RFK Jr., I should say, got into a little bit of what he called the media blackout of his campaign. Clip 2.
Our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party organs. The DNC-aligned mainstream media networks maintain a near-perfect embargo on interviews with me. Representatives of those networks are in this room right now, and I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it.
Wow.
Yeah, listen, I've heard interviews with RFK Jr., and he is very compelling when he's talking about big pharma, when he's talking about the endless wars, the military-industrial complex, all those kind of things. He's very compelling. I understand why the Democratic Party controlled mainstream media did not want him interviewed, because he really would go after, he probably would have gone after both Republican and Democratic power brokers. That's why he was not being interviewed. But the fact that his campaign was purposefully suffocated by the mainstream media is, I know there's a lawsuit that is going to go forward because of that. But that challenge to the members of the media that were in the room at the time, Fred, this goes back to what you said earlier about the shift away from old school journalists to what we have now. Listen, whenever CNN said they were going to try to make some changes to get back towards the middle, Washington Post, New York Times, they're in big trouble because they can't move.
That's right.
They can't move towards the middle to be unbiased because the type of quote-unquote journalists they have now, a lot of these young people who have been schooled by the schools of journalism on colleges and universities, they've been taught they're activists.
Yes.
And it's going to be very difficult for these news organizations to shift back to the old school journalism because they'll face a rebellion.
Well, there's the old saying, money talks, money walks. And we're seeing this. And this is the good news, the silver lining in all of this. The mainstream media has moved so far to the left that they've lost viewers.
Right.
In the case of the Post, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they've lost readers. LA Times, the same sort of thing. They're downsizing their staff.
Right.
CNN has had a couple of downsizes now. What was it, the Atlantic magazine?
Yes.
I think they announced a layoff of 100 there last week or so. So the bleeding heart left-wing media are losing advertising dollars because they're losing readers, they're losing viewers. Advertising dollars are based on how many eyes are on you.
Yeah.
And so if you've got fewer eyes on you, that ad money goes away. So they're really committing suicide.
You know, it's like corporate America, Fred. It's like corporate America when they sided with the DEI, CRT view, the pro-LGBTQ they sided with a portion
Yes.
of their customer base,
Yes.
alienating the rest.
Yes.
I mean, it is not a good business model. What you should do is if you make widgets, you make widgets. You don't get involved in politics. You don't anger your customer base.
Yeah.
And that's what these mainstream media outlets have done. They have, in essence, alienated half the U.S. population.
Yes.
By picking the left as the side they're going to champion.
And I don't understand it. These corporate people, just the people in the back shop that run the place, they look at Fox and they see what Fox is. Fox is making money hand over fist because they have a big audience. And it's because Fox at least attempts to be balanced. Most of their programs, if you watch Fox for a day, most of their programs will have a bleeding heart liberal point of view on there. It irritates me when I listen to them, but I understand it is good to hear them say where they're coming from.
Right.
Instead of that anchor telling me, but the left says this. No, we got a member of the left here, and now we're going to hear from her or from him.
Right.
And so they get to speak. So people, when they're watching Fox, get some degree of balance on there as far as the left and the right. But they give as much credibility to the right, which is what the other networks do not. We won't even have the right on our shows.
Yeah, and that goes back to what Bill Maher was talking about, Lonely Scott. You know, you have 5 against 1. Listen, now I'm not always a big fan of Fox.
No,
Fox can sound. I mean, they're not always straight conservative.
That's right.
So let me say this: for the major players in the news media, television news media, and online presence, Fox is the main game in town for conservatives.
Right. Yep.
And the reason why the left is having so many problems is because their half of the audience is split.
Yes.
It's split amongst CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC. Who have I left out? I've left out somebody. Okay. Their audience is split.
Yep.
And that's why I think that's why Fox is doing well. If Fox does not blow this,
yes,
they will be the main player. There are other television news outlets, but they're the major player right now on the conservative side of the spectrum. But the audience is fractured on the left, and that's why they all might go under.
Yes. Yeah. We have in the studio here, we watch 4 different networks.
Yes.
And very often, if it's a big news event, all 4 will carry it. But very often, Fox is the only one that is giving Trump some degree of platform for what he's, at least having him on there and having his say, where the other networks will not do that.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, I've been in the news business now since late 70s and doing this. It was, you get your proverbial knuckles cracked with the ruler.
Right.
If you allowed your point of view in your journalism.
Yes.
And I worked for secular side of things. Back in the 70s and the 80s when I was working with them, it was your goal not to show your bias. But it all changed about 20 years later.
Yeah.
It was all preaching about, and the term that was used was point of view journalism.
Yes.
We believe in point of view journalism. And by the way, we only agree with one point of view.
Okay. Chris, isn't it true that when on Friday, when RFK Jr. was making his announcement, CNN was covering it up until RFK Jr. started going after the Democratic Party? Then they cut away from his speech.
Yeah. Newsbusters documented that well on Friday with various posts or tweets to show people that they did kind of like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yes.
You know,
We've
brush it
covered
off.
enough of it.
And that's back to his point that, look, I was in a media blackout.
Yeah. All right. Next. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, let's mention this real quick because it's a good soundbite from Joe Concha reacting to the RFK Democrats media situation here that we've been discussing for a few minutes now. Clip 4.
You know, we saw those paid to give political analysis portray him as a kook, as someone who should not be taken seriously. And then the hit pieces came from the likes of the New York Times and the Washington Post because he was a threat to Joe Biden, the party nominee at the time. And now that Kennedy has come out and endorsed Donald Trump, those attacks on his character, on his worldview, are on steroids. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party fought tooth and nail to keep him off of every state ballot in the country. The party made sure that Joe Biden would not debate him during the primary process, which was not a process at all, and it was fixed to make sure that the sitting president was as protected and exposed the least amount as possible. And it's the Democratic Party, and I'll leave it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we do have that. Transitioning to a different situation here with the mainstream media, I've got Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton calling out Kamala Harris for her lack of policy positions during a segment on ABC. Listen to this, clip 6.
President Trump is going to draw a sharp contrast with Kamala Harris, who has supported things like decriminalizing illegal immigration or giving taxpayer-funded health insurance to illegal aliens or taking away health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, banning gas cars, confiscating firearms. These are all
what do you
positions
mean
that-
taking away health insurance? What are you talking about?
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the job, 170 million Americans, John.
Yeah, I mean that is not her position now. She no
How do you know that's not her
favors
position?
Medicare-
How do you know that's not her position?
I mean, she said she no longer supports
she has not said
Medicare
that.
for all.
She has not said that. Okay. Maybe anonymous aides on a Friday night have said that.
She hasn't said that, and it was almost like Jonathan.
That was a bad edit there on the end. But yeah, that was Fox and Friends laughing at how Jonathan Karl of ABC was clearly not prepared for that moment.
No.
In that exchange.
Well, she has said that. She has said all sorts of loony things.
Oh, yeah.
And now she's having to walk them all back because suddenly she's the Democratic Party's nominee.
Yes. Trying to win Pennsylvania, where, oh, by the way, fracking occurs a lot.
Yeah.
Where, people want it more. Anyway, so let's mention this because it is very important, and it's something we have started covering, and if the Lord tarries, we'll continue to cover this between now and November 5th. We're not just picking presidential candidates this November. Obviously, depending on the state you live in, you may have a lot of ballot initiatives, voting on this or voting against that. On our Today's Issues Facebook page, I have posted an infographic with the growing number of states voting on abortion somehow, some way this November. So do check out the Today's Issues Facebook page for that graphic. What you're going to hear now is a soundbite of Carol Tobias of National Right to Life talking about the importance of pro-lifers, not just voting on presidential candidates this November, but being informed and voting on abortion ballot initiatives, again, in the growing number of states doing so this November. Clip 11.
In a post-ops world, pro-lifers have to be even more active and vocal than they were before, because our opponents are putting together money and their own people trying to change the laws so that there are no limits whatsoever on abortion.
Fred, this is a bad situation that's developed after the Dobbs decision overturned Roe versus Wade and sent this back to the states, the issue of abortion. Sandy Rios sent around to leadership last night or over the weekend sometime an ad that has been running in some of these states. But how many states is it? 11 states?
Right now it's 11.
11 states are going to be voting on November 5th to enshrine abortion, many of them, maybe all of them, in their state constitutions, which is very difficult to overturn just in normal elections. But this ad was filled with lies.
Yes.
It was a highly polished ad with young women, the focus of the advertisement. I think it was a 30-second ad or maybe a 60-second ad. I don't remember. But it was filled with lies, saying that Republicans want to get rid of in vitro fertilization. They want to get rid of birth control, as well as getting rid of abortion. And listen, all those kinds of things are debated. I don't know any Republican. Certainly this hasn't happened in any national way where the Republican Party is calling for the banning birth control. But this is the problem in these state-by-state ballot initiative battles. The pro-life side is facing enormous amounts of money being poured into their state from outside national organizations in order to get young women to the polls to enshrine abortion. Now, that is what we asked for.
Yeah.
That is former President Trump's official position. It belongs to the states. But as she just said, pro-lifers have to get involved in this battle, or you're going to lose. You're going to lose these state battles.
Well, the pro-life movements in all of these states, these 11 states and others, have to get out there with the truth.
Right.
That is the bottom line. But the other thing, it's become so clear where the Democratic Party is. When they rolled in a mobile clinic to their convention last week in Chicago,
free abortions,
offering free abortions. This is one of the major national parties in this country, all in on go ahead and kill your baby.
Yeah.
Stop and think about
Yeah,
this.
they've gone a long way in just 30 years because 1992 was the first election I really remember and kind of paid attention to. And in the early 1990s, you had people like Bill Clinton, who probably could run and win again today. He was that popular enough back then. But he talked about abortion being, quote, safe, legal, and rare. And now we have people like Carol Tobias in a separate soundbite. I've aired it before on this program, but Carol says Democrats are no longer the party of choice. They are now the party of abortion, which, to Fred's point, is the reason why you truck the abortion truck up to Chicago, where they do kill a lot of babies on an annual basis. This was just more.
Well, and what kind of was underneath the radar, except here on AFR, is they're also giving free vasectomies to men.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells me, as I mentioned last week or maybe the week before, I forget, they weren't offering, free surgeries for carpal tunnel syndrome.
No.
Okay? This is vasectomies for a reason. They wanted young men to come in, get the free procedure so that they won't ever have children.
Yep.
The Democratic Party is not just anti-life, it is anti-family. It is anti-children. They believe children are killing the planet because of their lifetime carbon emissions.
Yes.
That, to me, was very telling.
Pay no attention to how all the people got to Chicago for the convention with their carbon emissions.
Right.
The Democratic Party of today is extreme left.
Yes.
I mean, just look at the facts, folks. This is not supposition on our part or speculation. Just look at the facts. A mobile abortion clinic at their convention.
Free.
Free.
Free death.
Yes.
Free death. All right, folks, we're going to take a short 5-minute break for news. American Family News will be on your radio, so you want to listen to that as well. And in 5 minutes, we'll be back. Steve Paisley Jordahl will be in for more news. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Please join us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You're aware of how important it is to stay engaged in America's culture war. One way American Family Association helps you to do that is through action alerts. Here's how it works. Once or twice a week, we'll email you about matters critical to America's families, and we'll offer ways to take action. Visit afa.net today and tap the Action Alert sign-up button.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. An emergency disaster declared in Alaska under a threat of deadly landslides reoccurring. Therese Crowley reports.
A key feature of Alaska's identity and allure now creating a sense of trauma after a hillside above neighborhoods in Ketchikan gave way, the landslide taking one life, leaving others injured, houses tipped sideways, leaning into trees above and below, taking out power closest to the slide. Crews are standing by with a secondary potential slide area detected. The Ketchikan city mayor says, in my 65 years in Ketchikan, I've never seen a slide of this magnitude. There's clearly a region-wide issue that we need to try to understand. Geologists project more powerful landslides with rising rainfall and temperatures, with calls to create an Alaska Unified Landslide Warning System. Therese Crowley, Fox News.
Former President Donald Trump cast doubt on his participation in a presidential debate hosted by ABC next month, calling the network fake news. The former president spoke to reporters about the debate at a Vietnamese restaurant in Falls Church, Virginia.
But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another network. I want to do it. You know, I won because of debates.
Republicans accusing vice presidential nominee Tim Walz of being soft on crime as governor of Minnesota. House Speaker Mike Johnson highlights Walz's response to the Minneapolis Black Lives Matter riots in 2020.
Tim Walz was the governor. He allowed Minnesota to burn. He allowed Minneapolis to burn. He sat on his hands while that happened and gave sympathy, really, to the rioters.
Vice President Kamala Harris is busy on the campaign trail ahead of the upcoming presidential election. Congressman Byron Donalds weighs in on the Biden administration.
During the DNC, I mean, they put Joe Biden on at midnight on a Monday, and he gave his speech, and they sent him to California on vacation. Kamala Harris has been running around the country campaigning. I'm not quite sure who's running the place.
Could Donald Trump be forced to spend the duration of the 2024 presidential campaign in an orange jumpsuit? Some conservative pundits are concerned about that possibility. Chad Groening has more.
With the two political conventions out of the way, normally the campaigns move into the crucial fall stretch run to the general election. But for Donald Trump, another obstacle looms. His September 18th sentencing by New York Judge Juan Merchan in the controversial hush money case conviction. While many pundits believe the Manhattan jury conviction for falsifying business records will ultimately be overturned, it probably won't be resolved until after the election. Gary Bauer is chairman of the Campaign for Working Families.
They would love to see Donald Trump die in prison because he, more than anybody, has fought against their plans to destroy the America that our founders gave us. The thing that will determine what the judge does is what he and others believe will keep half of America that supports Donald Trump and Donald Trump himself out of power, out of the government.
Robert Knight is a conservative activist and a columnist for the Washington Times.
This idea of putting Trump in jail while he's in the middle of a campaign, I don't think would go over well with the American people. They would see it as an act of a communist country, jailing an opponent. I think the jury is still out as to whether they'll go that far and try to actually put him in jail. I think at some point the Supreme Court will have to intervene to exert sanity and restrain the unbelievably politicized prosecutions of Donald Trump.
I'm Chad Groening.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is planning to visit China this week to reportedly try and set up another meeting between President Biden and the Chinese president. Republican Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn believes the U.S. needs to press China on multiple key issues.
They are getting by with buying all this oil and stockpiling it from Iran, and therefore helping to fund all of this that is taking place in the Middle East.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The loss of a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects the emotional health of families. Feelings of anger, sadness, and regret can be overwhelming. There is hope and healing in the aftermath of a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back, everyone, to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week. Joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Chris Woodward has left the show for the remainder. He's going back to his real job. And then Steve Paisley Jordahl comes in to fill in those shoes. Good morning, Steve.
Oh, okay. It's hard to fill his shoes.
Yeah.
You can only hope to follow him. But
yeah.
Here
But
I
can't
am.
fill his shoes.
Yeah, that's right.
You're just going to follow.
I could fill it.
Follow in his footsteps.
I could fill his shoes and more simply because my feet are a lot bigger than his. So,
all right, Steve.
Can I add my happy birthday to you?
Yes, you can.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Do you know what the #1 song on Billboard was the day you were born?
I have no idea.
Well,
He wasn't listening.
this was it.
Where are you, little star? Where are you? Oh,
Wow. Oh, the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star kind of ruined it. But that's kind of a crooner. Is that a crooner? Is that considered a crooner?
Yeah, it was.
Who was that?
The I have to look it up, man. I had
All the music was like that.
It was a different world back then.
Let me tell you, that little clip of a song you played made me feel older than anything else because that sounds ancient. That sounds ancient.
What I'm seeing is black and white.
Yes, black and white, definitely.
Lip sync video.
Whoever's singing it is in a suit and tie.
That's right.
The Elegance.
The Elegance.
Yeah, this is them.
Suit and tie.
There you go.
They're very white, too, by the way.
Yes. So, listen, a lot has changed, and the necessity, us dispensing with the necessity of wearing a suit and tie outside your house is a good development. I'm glad we're in 2024.
Yeah, right. You ever see the old pictures of ball games, like in the 50s?
Yeah.
All the guys were wearing ties.
Some of them in hats and
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
these days you're kind of glad that people are wearing pants.
Yes,
it's really.
Listen, on into the 60s, people went to church in suits and ties. Men, I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
My dad went to work in a suit and tie every day of his life till he retired.
You know, I have to confess.
I have jeans on today.
Maybe I'm so really showing my age, but I kind of miss some of that.
What, the suit and tie?
The formality.
Yeah.
Particularly with the airlines. You know, now there's some airlines, if you watch the flight attendants for some of the big airlines out of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Those ladies, what airline is it? They really dress nicely.
Yeah.
And nice makeup and the whole thing.
Yeah.
I kind of, because I in my time growing up, I remember Pan American Airlines.
Yeah.
And how those ladies, the flight attendants, used to dress. That was really cool.
They were called stewardesses back then.
Yes.
Yeah, they were. You can't call them stewardesses now.
Compared to the day when it's kind of cattle car, you know?
Yes.
And there are certain, and I won't mention them, there are certain airlines where you may be taking your life in your hands.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the plane crash.
Oh, I can mention. I'll mention that. I'll mention those later. And by the way, your airline attendant may be non-binary in a lot of these airlines too.
Yeah. The whole world's losing its mind. Well, not the whole world. The West seems to be losing its
Isn't it
its
true?
its mind. So I do not miss this. I went to I mentioned I went to an all boys Catholic high school.
Very
it was
strict.
suit coat and tie.
Yeah.
Every day.
Uh-huh.
And I don't miss that at all.
No.
It was pretty strict. Although I do remember the day when Brother John, who was the principal, slapped a kid. It was all of us changing classes, and you went downstairs, and there's 2 floors, and some kid was mouthing off to him, and he just hauled off and popped him, sent his head spinning. And I was like, whoop, I think I was a freshman.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you don't mess with Brother John.
Did he yell, "Be healed"?
No, that was not. He might have. I don't think anything happened to him. You went to that school. You just. It was no nuns with a ruler on your hand.
Yes.
So anyway.
All right.
That's back to the good old days. I don't miss most of that. Fred does.
Fred misses them.
Fred misses.
Well, the good old days in Canada were way different than the good old days here.
Yeah.
And the current days in Canada are way different than the current days here,
Yes,
too.
they are.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau.
Very true. Very
All right.
All right.
Take us away, Calgon.
You mentioned this story a little bit in the first hour. I wanted to talk about it. The guy who founded the tech platform Telegram, his name is Pavel Durov, and I don't believe he's related to Pavel Chekhov, but I'm not sure.
Nice.
He has been arrested in Paris for allowing his platform a little too much free speech. So this is what the New York Times is saying, that the Telegram is central to everyday life in countries like Russia, Ukraine, and India. He started a tech company in Russia and then quit when the Russian government and Vladimir Putin, for some reason, didn't want him to exercise free speech in
Right.
Russia. I don't know why. Yeah, he was giving platform to opposing candidates. So he moved, got a French citizenship, and now he started Telegram, which is huge. And the platform has helped people living under authoritarian governments communicate and organize, but has also made an app a haven for disinformation, far-right extremism, and other harmful comments. And specifically what they're saying is that it was on the radar of law enforcement agencies around the world because terrorist organizations, drug dealers, weapons dealers, and far-right extremist groups have used it for communicating, recruiting, and organizing. So he was arrested. Free speech, not that well in Europe. And do you remember the Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, Vindman? He was
vaguely
a little weasel guy. I mean, he looks like the kind of man that the Democrats are pushing now with Tim Walz and Kamala's husband. Kind of diminutive. He just doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, he was the one. He was a key witness in the impeachment trial against former Donald Trump. Not that I'm biased or anything, but he says, "Watch out, Elon." This is what he wrote. While Durov holds French citizenship, quote, I'm quoting, is arrested for violating French law, this has broader implications for other social media, including Twitter. There's a growing intolerance for platforming disinfo and malign influence and growing appetite for accountability. Musk should be nervous. When he got a lot of pushback, he doubled down, and he said the generous, significant backlash prompting him to double down on a follow-up post where he railed against free speech absolutist weirdos.
Free speech absolutist weirdos.
And
Now, Fred, my understanding from what Steve's saying, I'm also looking at an AP story on this, that Pavel Durov has been detained and arrested. Okay, now the charges are that the platform Telegram has been used for money laundering, drug trafficking, and other offenses. But it sounds like from this guy, what's his name? Alexander what? This guy?
Vindman.
Vindman.
Vindman. Vindman.
It sounds like the real complaint is the free speech angle of Telegram and, of course, with X, formerly known as Twitter, with Elon Musk. Now, admittedly, this is still pretty new for developed nations, having these platforms. What is their role? Are they publishers? Are they, all those kinds of questions are still being sorted out. But it seems to me the real reason they're going after Durov is because it is a platform that wants more and more free speech, and the globalists and the leftists do not want free speech. They want controlled speech.
Well, we saw this, and I go back to COVID days here in this country. Someone with a slightly different opinion than Dr. Fauci,
right,
and the administration, what happened to them? It happened to our program when we started talking about
ivermectin.
Yes, we started talking about that. What happened? We were taken down.
Right.
And it wasn't because that was a wacko idea. We were just talking about the fact some people were being helped by that.
Yeah.
But the government said, and their mainstream media allies were basically saying, no, it's got to be the government line or nothing at all.
Yes.
We have to be we're living in a I believe, very dangerous time, because that mentality is taking deep root. And it goes to what we're seeing on college campuses. I think that story is continuing to unfold. That on college campuses, they like to talk about Islamophobia.
Right.
All right. What a terrible thing that is. But we didn't know what Jewish students were facing on our campuses until these protests.
Right.
That erupted after October the 7th. Protests against Israel and those Jewish students. The Jewish student says, I can't walk around with a piece of jewelry on my neck that has a Star of David on it.
Right.
Or I'll be persecuted. The universities knew this. But because that speech was not protected, I'm talking about a piece of jewelry with the Star of David on it, we don't want to interfere with those who are attacking these Jewish students. That's interfering with their free speech rights. But you Jewish people, kind of tone it down, take that jewelry off, don't let people know you're Jewish. This was happening right here in our American campuses,
right,
in this country. So beware, this is not a small thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we need to be really careful of this because there is, it's a globalist agenda, but I believe you have a government in Washington, D.C. right now and some state governments that are quite willing to go along with this.
And social media platforms themselves are willing to shut the door on free speech, as you were mentioning.
And Christians better be careful. Christians don't say, well, that's just happening to Jewish students. No. Listen, they're coming for you too, Christian students. If you express the point of view in your classroom that I believe that Jesus is the only way of salvation, and that if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you're going to spend eternity in hell. We're about that close for that kind of speech to be outlawed in classrooms.
Yes.
I played this clip for you. I didn't cut it, but I think I can. We'll see if this works. But Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, this is his view on free speech. Let's see if they can make this work.
Yeah, I think we're not getting that. We will try to get.
He said Tim Walz is basically saying there's no First Amendment protection against hate speech.
Right, or against misinformation.
He's wrong.
Yes.
And of course, how does he define hate speech?
Or how does he define even as frightening as the hate speech thing? How does someone like Tim Walz define misinformation?
Yes.
So it goes to the point you were making. We can't even have a scientific debate. During COVID, there were medical health professionals, some of them way up the food chain, in terms of their credentials. Were saying, listen, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin may have a role to play. They were shut down for misinformation. People who said masks don't work, all that, we all remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Who defines what misinformation is? Now, we're getting closer and closer to the brave new world of George Orwell when you have officially approved free speech.
Yes.
That's not free speech at all.
No.
All right, Steve.
All right, just in time for an election, we're going to see cheaper gas. A coincidence? I think not. So there's a couple things that are happening right prior to this election I think I would just like to let you know about. There will be, according to NPR and other sources, the national average for a gallon of regular gasoline right now has fallen more than 20 cents since May, and is expected to possibly lead to $3 a gallon gas for the first time since 2021.
That's a national average.
National average. It's $4.59 in California, and it's $2.93 here in Mississippi. That's the high and the low in the country.
Okay.
Now, they are saying summer it always ramps up. They always produce a little more fuel in the summer because people are driving and everything.
Right.
We haven't had hurricanes near as much as they thought they were, knocking off oil towers and processing plants to the coast. But there's that. And then let me say this. The Director General of the WHO, Tedros Ghebreyesus, has determined that there is an upsurge of Mpox in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. That used to be called monkeypox.
Yeah.
It's in humans. And he is declaring a public health emergency of international concern.
Well, good luck with that.
Just in time for an election coming around. Coincidence?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good.
I'm not saying that there's not an increase in Mpox. I know
Why'd they switch from monkeypox to Mpox?
I think they were worried about being animist against monkeys.
Discriminatory.
Speciesism.
Speciesism.
Right. Yeah. So.
Or speciesism.
They also have they now are coming out with. I have a story running. I think it's today. With new vaccines for COVID. They have approved new vaccines for COVID that are coming out, millions of doses shipping in the next day or two, but for strands that have largely gone away. They're a generation or so behind.
Oh, wow.
So they're still not safe. They're a little safer than they were before. Still not safe. All of these things conspiring. My message to you out there, my dear listener, is things are going to seem to get better between now and November. Whatever the federal government, the Biden-Harris administration can manipulate to look good, they're going to do it. It's smoke and mirrors. They're going to go back to the spending. They're going to go back. They're going to stop raiding the reserve fuel, if that's what they're doing or whatever, after the election. But they're making it look better so that you'll vote for them. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, President Biden tapped into that, Fred, to try to drive down prices.
Yes.
But that's an artificial attempt. It's not going to counter the very strong market forces that drove those fuel prices up. And for poor folks like Brent Creeley, our producer, who still has a pickup truck that is diesel,
yes.
The diesel folks are really hurting.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, these kinds of shenanigans go on whenever a president wants to try to preserve his or her, chances at reelection. We understand that. But the radicals on the left of the Democratic Party, make no mistake, if they get into power,
yes,
all that stuff is going back up. All those prices are going back up when they're spending trillions of dollars worth of spending plans kicks in, when they continue to clamp down on oil production in this country and natural gas production. All that's going back up when all their green new deal plans are instituted. They get rid of traditional air conditioners and your gas stove. They get rid of all these things. All your prices are going to go through the roof. Whatever little downtick they get is going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be a tsunami of rising prices in the attempt to control this economy.
Well, I was talking to a few people in the last week or so about, the election campaign is on and what is being said, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, look, the one good thing we have right now in this election cycle, we have a record of this administration. And what was it, on border security? What did Joe Biden do? He ceased building the wall.
Right.
He told us even before he was elected, Joe Biden did, he would invite a surge at the border. He invited an invasion of this country.
Yes.
And he
got it.
Yes, he's allowed it. At least 10 million people into the country.
Some estimates upwards towards 30.
Yes, upwards 30. Yeah, 10 million. I think it's actually 8 million and something official record.
Right.
But it's well beyond that. So you have that on the border. You have the environmental agencies under this administration. They have talked about 67% of the new cars, and I forget what the particular date is.
I think it's 2032.
Have to be electric.
Yeah.
So folks, the record is there of their agenda. Just look at it. Don't even take our word for it.
Right.
Just look at what their plans are. They haven't given up on those plans.
Oh, Kamala Harris, Steve, saying she wants price controls. That was her big attempt to grab the wheels of for economic planning, was price controls, which they had in Venezuela. It was in the 1950s the fourth wealthiest economy in the world, and in the 70s and 80s it was the number one wealthiest country in Latin America, in South America, I think. And now 75% of the people in Venezuela are in extreme poverty.
Oh, it's awful there. So she's walked that back slightly, or her team has. She hasn't said anything about her policies, but her team has walked that back slightly, saying, "Oh, she didn't mean it. She's just going to be just for supermarket things, and only in dire emergencies, terms of which she never defines." Here's the other thing that she said was her policy. It's tax on unrealized income.
Yes.
That means if you own stock and you say, "Oh, I'm not wealthy, I don't own stock." Do you have a retirement plan for your work? You own stock. If that stock goes up, or maybe the value of your house goes up by, let's say your value of your house goes up over a year by $20,000. You haven't sold the house. It's just worth more. She wants to tax you on that money that you haven't actually realized, haven't made. It's just on paper, but you're going to get taxed in real dollars for it.
Yeah. Now the Kamala Harris campaign has said that this is only going to be on people who are worth $400 million and up. So I do want to be fair about that claim, that pushback on it. But I'm sorry, I don't believe that is where it's going to stay, because the trillions of dollars they want to spend, they are not going to be able to get it just by draining money out of the bank accounts of wealthy people.
Nope.
What else we got?
All right, let's end here. The poor man. I want to give a shout out to Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, 2 astronauts that went up for an 8-day visit to the International Space Station, only to find that the Boeing Starliner that they flew up on was having some hydrogen leaks as it was docked to the space station, and they didn't know how to get them down. They've been up there now 3 months, and it looks like they're going to be up there another 6 months. It was supposed to be 8 days because Boeing can't seem to get its manufacturing together. Everything now here on Earth, we got Boeing parts falling off planes.
Right.
It's just been one PR disaster after another. But they're going to have to get Elon Musk is going to have to retrofit one of his space vehicles to go up and rescue them, and they're not any too happy about it.
And there was something I had read that there was something wrong with the suits that they have.
The suits are not compatible, like with the Russian spacecraft that go up there.
Yeah.
The suits that the Boeing crew, it doesn't fit the nozzles where the oxygen comes in, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why they have to wait for Elon Musk, SpaceX, I guess it is,
SpaceX, yeah,
to fit his capsule so that those suits will work so they can go up and bring them home.
You know, let me just toss this to you guys here. We got 60 seconds or so. Either one of you can jump in here. Elon Musk has had quite a run. I don't know. How many of us heard of Elon Musk 10 years ago? I just can't remember when he started coming into the public eye. But this guy is on quite a run.
He had a tunneling company that digs tunnels for subways and everything, made millions and millions of dollars off of it. He has so many irons and so many fires. He is an amazing, amazing man.
Yeah, he's by all accounts a genius. And now, if he's the one who rescues these 2 people, his fame only grows.
Yeah.
What's he going to buy next?
Facebook, hopefully.
Yeah, Facebook. Oh, man. All right, folks. Guess what? That's it. That's all the time we have for today's issues today. But good news, Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow with more of today's issues. There's more great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. Download the app if you don't have it, the AFR app, and let your friends know about it so they can listen to AFR wherever they go and wherever they have a strong signal. Anyway, again, more great programming directly ahead. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.
If you're 65 or older, you know this.